I was ill for quite a bit of February, and so it was mental health, and then there was a physical illness, and then reading just didn't happen. So I only read 5 books this month, and I want to talk about them. I 2 of them are graphic novels, so those I fly through like crazy. So no, 2 of them were not graphic. What books did I read this month? What a fucking mess. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. What was my 5th book? What was my 5th book? I don't remember. Struggling. Let's start with Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. This was a book, it's a young adult novel that is about a man who is in his 20s, who I think he might be 19 or 20. He's a college dropout and he works at a convenience store or like a gas station kind of thing in New York. Or it's a bodega, but he doesn't consider it a bodega, even though there's a cat that's there and it's basically like a gas station and a bodega. So, one day, a girl walks in around his age, and he kind of recognizes her from somewhere and then realizes that she is famous. And she's kind of like Taylor Swift. She is kind of like a movie star, kind of a singer, kind of a pop star. She's really famous, has millions of Instagram followers, that kind of thing. And they strike up a relationship and things go from there. I gave this 3.5 stars. I thought it was pretty good. I liked the conversation about trying to figure out what you're doing with your life, because this is a college dropout who is unsure of what he's doing. He doesn't really have any direction. He doesn't really have any hobbies, because I hate when a book is like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life after college. The only thing I have is I'm super talented at painting and I could sell them very easily. Like where somebody has a very obvious talent that they could use to make money and then they end up doing that for money. Like I hate those kind of stories, because it's like, okay, well, you may not have known what you wanted to do, but you had something that you can make money off of that you love doing. This is kind of like a listless guy who doesn't really love doing anything. He is in a lot of debt. He feels like he's letting down his family because he was in NYU and just ended up dropping out of it. And the problem that I really had with this book is that it's really hard to make me care about famous people. Like, this girl is complaining all the time about how hard it is to be famous and how she hates traveling the world all the time and how she's exhausted from it. And I'm like, I get that. I do. But at the same time, you're talking to a dude who can't pay his bills. Like, I think he has bigger problems than you do. And maybe that's unfair to say that somebody has bigger problems than somebody else, but money stresses are such terrible stresses to have that I just feel more sympathy for him than I do for her. It's hard to empathize with, I guess, is what I'm saying. So overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. The second book that I read was We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. I've read a couple of books by her. They all have a tendency to be gay. They all have a tendency to be pretty deep for young adult novels. And it was a really short and small book. It was only like this big. So it was pretty easy to fly through. It's a story about a girl who leaves in the middle of the night and just gets in a taxi cab with nothing but her wallet, and that's about it. She goes to her school that she's planning on attending in the fall, and she stays in a motel until her dorm room is ready. This girl kind of goes through it. She is living with her grandfather in high school because her mother ended up dying in a surfing accident. And I don't remember what happened to her father. I think her father was never a part of the picture. And she ends up leaving, and she has a friend come and visit her in her dorm room, and you kind of find out why she left and what was going on. The book talks a lot about grief, which in my defense, I did not know it was a book about grief when I went into it. I just knew it was a book that a lot of people liked, and I picked it up because I hadn't read it before. And you can't say that I only read books about grief, because That's only partially true. This book talks a lot about grief, and I think the way it's handled is really interesting because I think it's handled really well because it shows one type of grief because it's the one girl going through it and how she kind of avoids her feelings and how she doesn't like to talk about it and how she doesn't like to get help from other people. Girl just wants to escape. And I think it's really valid to avoid your grief and not reach out to other people and kind of push people away. But with this book, I find it more realistic because it found it more realistic in this book and it was easier to believe. And this girl's just trying her best. She is not wanting help from anybody. She just wants to be left alone. And her friend is just trying to pry that grief out of her, trying to find out what happened. And so you slowly learn what happens after that. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I thought it was really good. Yeah. The next book I did kind of a reading blog about was The Ministry of Time. This book is a story about a near future where, in England at least, they have discovered time travel and they decide to take some people from the past who are destined to die and bring them into the present to see if it is possible to time travel without any adverse effects. So, in order to monitor these people, everyone is assigned a handler, basically. I don't remember what they were called. And our main character, whose name we do not know, is assigned to Graham, who was in an Arctic expedition and was destined to freeze to death because it was a failed expedition. It was actually a real life expedition that happened in the 1800s, and everybody on the crew ended up dying. I thought this book was really interesting. I really liked the concept, and I really liked the idea of seeing people from like the 1800s and earlier and them learning what the life is like now and trying to adjust to that. I thought it was really fascinating to see. And trying to think of, well, what would I act like if I went into the future and had no idea what was going on? The only issue I really had with this book is that it got a little confusing towards the end and it really took a turn. A lot of people go into this book thinking it's a romance. Don't. It's not. There is some romance in there, but I wouldn't go and say that it is a romance book. And I also have a little bit of an issue of using real life people in order to make your story. I think it's not as problematic as some other books that I read just because it was somebody from far into the past. But I probably still would have used somebody fictional. I feel weird about it. I don't know. Maybe other people don't have this issue, but I'm just like, did it have to be a real person? I ended up giving it 4 stars. I thought it was a lot of fun. And yeah, let's talk about the next one. I actually have a physical copy of this book. All of the books I read this month were from the library, so that's why I don't have any of them. The next book I read was Hungry Ghost by Victoria Ying. This is a story about a girl who has an eating disorder. She is in high school, and she's in high school, right? Yeah. She is in high school, and she is trying to fight this eating disorder. She has I'm not going to go into details about eating disorders because let's not trigger anybody, but she is kind of hiding it from everybody and is obsessed with weight and obsessed with food and everything like that. And then her life kind of falls apart after a tragedy happens. I really love the art style of this book, and I also think it's a really important topic to have because I have read a couple of graphic novels that are about eating disorders, but I still feel like it's a topic that not a lot of people like to talk about. And also, I think there's a lot of people out there that have disordered eating that don't really realize it, like people who obsess over it or people who track calories to kind of a detrimental amount. And so I think it's more common than we think. And so I think it's important to have these kind of books. The only issue I had with this book, I ended up giving it 3 stars. She has an eating disorder, yes, but she also is kind of cruel about it. Like, typically, the books that I've read in the past and with my own experience when it comes to eating disorders, people typically, the hatred that they have is turned inwards. They hate themselves, they hate the way they look, and that is true with this character, but she also hates the people around her. She has a best friend who is overweight, and she is constantly calling her ugly and fat and saying that she could never get a football player to date her because of how she looks. I found this hard to read. I think is my biggest problem. It was kind of hard to read just because I don't appreciate the fat phobicness. And I know goes hand in hand with an eating disorder. I know it does, but it's just really harsh. And her friend forgives her like immediately. And I'm like, if that was me, I would be so pissed. And I would find it really hard to forgive someone who called me fat and ugly and would said something like, well, why would he date you? Because you're disgusting and things like that. And just these horrible things. It's really hard to make her a likable character, but maybe that was the point. Maybe I just missed the point. I don't know. The last book that I read, unless I decide to read some graphic novel in the next 2 days, was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I've read The Night Circus by this author, and I read it a long time ago, when it first came out, because my mom worked at Barnes & Noble and everyone was obsessed with it. So she was like, you got to read this book. So I read it a long time ago. I remember not liking the ending very much. And this book, I think I liked better because I remember not liking The Night Circus very much. Is that a hot take? But this is kind of a no plot, just vibes kind of thing, where this character, Zachary, is he's doing a master's degree, I believe, in video game design. This guy ends up finding a book in his library, in his school library, that has no author on it, and inside one of the stories is about him when he is a kid, and he finds a door that he ends up not opening, and he decides to try and find that door or find another door to get to the Starless Sea. And it doesn't have a lot of plot to it. It is mostly just him wandering this a fantastical place and finding new rooms and finding new things and finding new areas and that kind of thing. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was really interesting. It had more of what I wanted Watermoon to have, which was I wanted it to spend more time in certain places because I thought they were really creative places, but I wanted more from it. And this is kind of what I was looking for. The only problem I have with this book is that it has moments of kind of plot and action to it. He meets these 2 characters, Mirabelle and Dorian, who I love both of them, but they're not in it very much. It's mostly Zachary when he's by himself. And the moments when there is some action, I really enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed when the 3 of them were together, or when one of the 2 of them were trying to save the third. And it made me really miss those parts when it was just him wandering around by himself. So, yeah. That's it. Let me get some. Hold on. Okay, let's talk about some books that I'm hoping to read. For one, I have to finish Watermoon. I've been reading this book for a month, but I keep going to the library and getting new books, so I really need to read this one. But I'm really close to being done with it. I only have a fourth of the way through, or a fourth of the way to go. So I'm hoping to finish reading it. I really like this book, so I just want to finish and see how it ends. Also would like to take a stab at Shark Heart, a love story by Emily Hebeck. Yeah. This is a story about a married couple, and the husband is slowly turning into a great white shark. And I've heard it's really heartfelt and is really good and really sad. I think that's it. I think that's all I want to talk about. Hopefully, I'll have more books to tell you about next month. And I'm hoping to have a vlog out sometime in the next couple of weeks. So I'll see you then. Bye.